for Ukraine. Ukraine. New world order.
Russia.
That's right. Russia, Ukraine, New World Order. It's all going down. And it seems, according to my calculations, Gons, that, well, a lot of domestic news here in the U.S. I understand we've got a lot of international listeners, and we apologize. We've been sort of domestically focused the past few episodes. Oh, that's because they're putting a lot of work into distracting us from, well, the inevitable demise of the world order. I'd like to go through a bit of a timeline breakdown that will take us to the present. Gons, will you go on this journey with me?
Sure. Yeah, we've ignored Ukraine for the last couple episodes, and that tends to happen. We may do that more strategically in a way where things add up, and then we are able to.
If things are happening, if we're not reporting on something big, it means that we're watching it, building a case, ready to strike when analysis is fresh and ready. And I believe that today is the day. I want to, like I said, I'm going to run through a few articles that will trace the timeline over the past week or so, and that'll take us to current. So on May 30th, this is coming from usnews.com. The headline, U.S. will not send Ukraine rocket systems that can reach Russia, says Biden. Oh, Biden, says you.
What about what happened to the 40 bill? That's not included in the 40 bill?
No, apparently not. And that 40 bill is now like 56 bill now.
Oh, it's even more now.
That's old news, Gons. That's
okay,
old
sorry.
news. So this was on March 30th.
May 30th.
Did I say? Oh, I always get those mixed up. Yeah, May 30th. The United States will not send Ukraine rocket systems that can reach into Russia, President Joe Biden said on Monday, as Ukraine pushes for longer-range weapons system to help in its fight. Ukrainian officials have been asking allies for longer-range systems, including the Multiple Launch Rocket System, or MLRS, that can fire a barrage of rockets hundreds of miles away. Quote, "We're not going to send Ukraine rocket systems that strike into Russia."
Is that Joe?
Direct quote from Biden.
Joe.
He told reporters after arriving back at the White House after a weekend in Delaware. All right, so that happened on the 30th.
Okay.
Let's zoom the clock forward just a little bit. There you go. This is coming from Defense One, and for some reason, it is not letting me scroll. Can you scroll on this page?
Yes, I can. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, why don't you...
This is Defense One headline here.
Give us the date.
May 31st, so the day after.
The very next day after Biden made that announcement about not sending rockets.
Headline, U.S. to send Ukraine advanced rockets. Kiev promises not to fire into Russia. Oh, that's good. Promises.
It's a promise, Gons. A promise is a promise.
If we had a tally, a big tracker of all the promises made at the international stage between nations and how many of them have actually followed through with the promise, I don't know. I'd say success rate is not looking too hot, but okay.
You're thinking too deep into it.
Oh,
just
whatever.
Click back over to the Kardashians.
Okay, we must help the Vladimir, the other one, the Z-Man. He needs rockets. We give him rockets.
All right, read us a little bit of this.
The United States plans to send Ukraine advanced long-range artillery that President Volodymyr Zelensky had requested for weeks, but Biden administration officials said would only be armed with limited-range munitions and would not be used to strike targets inside of Russia. White House officials on Tuesday announced that the M142 High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, or HIMARS,
HIMARS.
Oh, it's HIMARS.
I love it. I love military acronyms.
Would be part of a new $700 million arms package for Ukraine. A new one.
It's a new one.
Different from the 40 for $57 billion now.
It's not even in the billions.
Oh my
it's just
gosh.
it's a different package.
And it's almost $1 billion at $700 million. So, which has received increasingly more advanced and lethal weapons to fight Russia's invasion. Quote, "At this time, we've decided not to provide the longer range of munitions A senior administration official said on Monday President Joe Biden told the reporters that his administration will, quote, not send to Ukraine rocket systems that can strike into Russia, according to the White House poll reports. But medium-range rockets could reach Russia if fired from positions near its border.
Exactly. So here's the breakdown, and you'll hear a couple different numbers.
Yeah.
So with these rockets, there's a 30-kilometer firing range on like a basic level. Then there's a 70-kilometer firing range on like a medium, the medium package.
Yeah,
but then there's the platinum package, Gons. The platinum package can launch, 300 kilometers. So when he's saying, oh, we're not going to give them the platinum package, they can't shoot at 300 kilometers, but they are giving them the 70-kilometer option, which, you could still hit Russia with, and we'll get into the details of that in a second.
I can hit Russia with a water rocket if I'm close enough to the border.
Yeah,
there.
exactly. They're right on the border.
It's funny because I just lost my train of thought. There's something else going on, but
it is funny.
It is the whole thing.
Funny.
Oh no, the picture. Okay, so everyone, I remember now. The whole, everyone thinks that Elon Musk is the real life Tony Stark, but in reality, it's Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the one that's like,
endless
this one
finances.
The thing is a million miles. This one's in 60 miles. We'll give you the 60 mile.
Well,
rocket.
it's funny. It's even more you might even be more right than you expected, Gons, because if everybody knows Iron Man 1, Tony Stark and Stark Industries made all their money selling weapons. Yep. They're an arms industry thing. So you think of Tony Stark, everybody thinks of Iron Man, which, maybe that's more of the Elon comparison. But if you're talking straight arms deals, Joe Biden is Tony Stark.
Hey, if Joe goes down, they're going to give him his with the crystal heart there.
Yeah, he'll get his little arc reactor.
Yeah, the arc reactor.
In his chest. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so there you go. One day, Biden is telling reporters we're not going to give rockets. The very next day, they're sending the rockets.
Yeah.
Now, we're heading over to AmericanMilitaryNews.com.
Yeah.
This was June 4th. This was a couple days later. Quote, headline, Russia threatens to strike the West. Quote, horsemen of the apocalypse are coming.
Oh, boy.
Woo!
They're invoking the biblical language.
That's right. Wow. Hey, look at you. There you go. Horsemen of the apocalypse are coming. Okay, let's see. One of Russian President Vladimir Putin's top advisors warned that the Kremlin will target Western, quote, decision-making centers if Ukraine uses U.S.-supplied rockets to strike Russia, adding a chilling warning that the, quote, horsemen of the apocalypse are already on their way. Quote, if, God forbid, these weapons are used against Russian territory, and that's key, then our armed forces will have no other choice but to strike decision-making centers. Dmitry Medvedev, who's becoming a real celebrity on this show. Old Medvedev, deputy chairman of Russia's National Security Council told Al Jazeera, as reported by Metro, quote, of course, it needs to be understood that the final decision-making centers in this case, unfortunately, are not located in the territory of Kiev. I love this. He's really having to break it down for us. Medvedev also issued a grim warning that the conflict is pushing the world toward nuclear Armageddon. Quote, the horsemen of the apocalypse are already on their way, and all hope now is with Lord God the Almighty, he said. President Joe Biden announced Tuesday that his administration will send, quote, more advanced rocket systems and munitions to Ukraine as the nation's war with Russia rages on. Quote, as President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has said, ultimately, this war will only definitely end through diplomacy. Every negotiation reflects the facts on the ground. We have moved quickly to send Ukraine a significant amount of weaponry and ammunition so it can fight on the battlefield and be in the strongest possible position at the negotiating table, Biden wrote in an opinion piece published in the New York Times on Tuesday. Oh, we loved his opinion piece, of course. Quote, that's why I've decided that we will provide the Ukrainians with more advanced rocket systems, etc., etc., etc. So there you go. Not only did we say we're not going to send the rockets? We went ahead and did send the rockets, and Russia threatens to strike the West, and invoking the Horsemen of the Apocalypse and nuclear Armageddon in very biblical terms. I mean, notice the biblical sort of language from Medvedev there. And you got to remember that on the ground in Russia, Putin is very much making this a sort of crusade. This is a religious war. A lot of people are kind of forgetting that aspect of it. When I say a lot of people, I mean in the mainstream. But we won't forget here, folks. Remember when the Moskva ship was sunk? It wasn't that the ship was sunk. That was the big deal. Is that there was a Christian relic on board.
The wood from the cross.
Yes. Putin
allegedly
was making a bigger deal about the fact that the Christian relic was lost than the ship. And, of course, the Eastern Orthodox Church being, quite strong as far as the sort of social, political sphere in Russia. So you got to remember, they are using this language as a part of their framing of the war as a religious war. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so Horsemen of the Apocalypse are on their way. That was June 4th. Now, we're going to carry some water for Putin real quick.
Uh-oh.
We're going to take this article from RT, and it says Ukraine backtracks on promise to U.S. Uh-oh. Ukraine will use U.S.-supplied rocket systems to strike into Russian territory, should it deem such attack necessary, Ukrainian presidential advisor Alexei Arestovich said on Thursday, responding to a question about whether the restrictions on the use of U.S.-supplied rocket systems apply to Crimea, a peninsula that overwhelmingly voted to become part of Russia in a 2014 referendum. Arestovich said that it belonged to Ukraine. Quote, Crimea is ours. It belongs to Ukraine, and they, Russia, know it. Therefore, it will fly to Crimea double time should the need arise, he pointed out, alleging that Kiev has already successfully struck targets on the peninsula. Arestovich's comments come despite the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, saying on Wednesday that Kiev has given Washington, quote, assurances that it won't use American rockets to attack targets in Russia.
Yeah, that's what the intelligence agencies and Ukraine PR partnership have come up with too.
Yeah. Well, and remember, this is RT, so it's a sort of contentious information flow. Of course, the U.S. mainstream will have you believe that RT is state propaganda for Russia, and it may very well be. But does that change the facts in the story? We don't know. There's, of course, but the other question is, would other mainstream news report it if Zelensky went back on his word? Remember, he's sort of this savior figure right now in the U.S. media. And for him to go back on his word, on promising not to shoot at Russia with these missiles, is that something we would even hear about? Who knows? Yeah. So this is making it look a little grim, Gons. A little grim. You got Russia promising to strike at Western decision-making centers. And what are these decision-making centers? They're, in this case, who's making these decisions? Well, it's the United States. It's the UK. It's NATO, more or less, is sort of the explicit enemy in this case. And yet, here we are in the U.S., being completely distracted by almost daily mass shootings, Roe v. Wade issues, Canada dealing with their gun control issues, which we'll spend some more time on Wednesday on. Some really inflammatory domestic things, perfectly timed to where I really have not heard a lot of people talking about the fact that we have basically set up a situation to, it seems, seemingly purposefully lure Putin into striking a NATO decision-making center. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me, does it not? Or to
Yeah,
you?
it does.
What about you?
No, it does. But I think we're in good hands. This part of the sort of fringy aspect of this, and for some reason it just keeps getting reported, is the Israelis, or not Israelis as a whole, but just a couple Israeli people talking about aliens in relationship to all this stuff going on. This is from the BharatExpressNews.com. Just as a side note, I don't think you need to worry about Putin's, invoking of the four horsemen, because Putin's nukes will be stopped by aliens who claim spoon buster Yuri Geller. I don't know why that headline doesn't make sense, but basically, Yuri Geller believes aliens will stop Vladimir Putin if he tries to fire his nukes. The Spoon Master thinks they will use advanced technology to jam the Russian dictator's warheads. Yuri, 75 years old, said, quote, "With a click of a button, we can stop traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and we can knock out radar systems." Quite the range there between Golden Gate Bridge and knocking out radar systems. Continuing the quote here, "We can do anything with cyber today. You can imagine what aliens can do."
Ooh, can you imagine?
Cyber aliens?
Oh, well, that's nice. We don't need to really worry about it then. I think it's funny. Now, we've talked about, of course, the aliens deception, the great deception, the connections with the Book of Revelation, the sort of revealing of the aliens as our creators and saviors and things, and this being a secular answer to, well, basically the Book of Revelation. Yeah. We've talked about this for years. And I think it is interesting that Putin is framing this, at least to his people, as a religious war. That this is, this is not simply a geopolitical issue. This is, the Eastern Orthodox Christianity defending the truth against the rotten West, the anti-moralistic West, etc. And the West's, at least the mainstream West's answer is like, yes, instead of to juxtapose Putin's "God is on our side," we have the aliens are on our side, folks.
The aliens are for Ukraine.
Yeah, don't worry.
It's weird, man. It's very weird, and it's we've noticed the pattern with these. We'll mention another Israeli individual that's been sort of kind of not inflammatory, but just very provocative in some of their takes. And the mainstream loves it. They pick up on it. Yuri Geller being the Israeli-British illusionist, magician, TV personality, and self-proclaimed psychic. He's the one that hung out with Puharich in the 40s, 50s, whatever, and channeled the Council of Nine and all that stuff. Star Trek is all based on that. So Yuri Geller, the spoonbender, as he is known, being featured in the conversation about the Ukraine-Russia situation in the context of aliens will stop Putin's nukes. Yeah. Which, again, you're right. The comparison, the juxtaposition with Russia being Eastern Orthodox, sort of nation, and the West with their alien priests, Israeli alien priests.
And we don't want to lose it. I mean, we're here, we're talking about the mainstream news, we're deconstructing, taking it apart, seeing what they're trying to tell us. But I mean, still put this in the context of sort of the grand cosmic scheme that is not new and has been sort of tracked. Well, we've tracked it as well as lots of other wonderful people on the internet, track the progress towards the great deception of the aliens being the ultimate spiritual reality. Just putting this side by side, the East versus West, the Christianity versus the alien deception is really incredible.
Pretty wild. Yeah.
Now, after Russia said that the Horsemen of the Apocalypse are on their way and we're going to, launch our nukes at you. This was 2 days later, June 6th. Business Insider, which is sort of a known intelligence outlet.
I got a different article here. Hold on. You threw a curveball at me. Hold on.
No. This was above your alien one. You skipped over it. It's okay.
Yeah. You added that in after. Okay, here we go.
UK, this is the headline, UK ignores Putin's threats and will send cutting-edge guided rocket systems to Ukraine that can hit targets nearly 50 miles away. So even after the threats, the direct threats of, hey, if what's his face, if Zelensky uses these missiles and hits Russian territory, then we're going to have to strike back at Western decision-making centers. Then Zelensky says, oh, yeah. Oh, we're definitely going to shoot these at your territory, Russia. Sorry. There must have been some sort of misunderstanding, Anthony Blinken. We're definitely going to shoot these at Crimea. So just know that that's going to happen.
It's as if they want to start a war.
And then Boris is like, oh, we'll have more missiles then.
How's that?
Yeah, how's that? You
How's
want
that? More
rockets?
missiles?
Oh. I mean,
Okay.
if you run down this timeline and put all of these articles together and into a comprehensive storyline of history that we are watching play out immediately, it very much looks like the West is on purpose baiting Putin into launching missiles.
Exact same thing that happened in World War II, provoking Japan to attack Pearl Harbor.
Taking the same exact steps, saying we want diplomacy and we don't want to, intensify things. We don't want to do it. We're here to end the war through diplomatic means. And then every action they take is the exact action that Putin says, hey, don't do this or else I'll have to do something. And then they just do it. It's really incredible.
The UK jumping in is kind of funny because in the context of NATO, in the narrative that we're sort of proposing in that, the West and NATO, they're trying to start this war, but they don't want to be the first ones to kick it off. They want Putin to kick it off.
Exactly.
So
they have to have Putin kick it off.
It's funny because, the U.S. is doing these moves with Ukraine and sending him rockets and stuff like that. And then Russia fires back, right? Russia's like, oh, we're going to unleash the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And that's when the UK is like, oh, look, it's working. They're getting provoked. Let's send more rockets.
Exactly.
I love it. It's just like, oh, it's working. Oh, here's more. Oh.
When Putin makes a threat, what he's telling the West is, yes, you're on the right track.
Yeah,
Keep going. And if you remember, the whole thing started from us provoking Putin through the invitation of Ukraine into NATO in the first place. We baited him into the first war to begin with.
Yeah.
And now we just continue to bait him on. Now, just a couple things to mention here. We've got CNN.com. This was a couple days ago, June 2nd. U.S. confirms military hackers have conducted cyber operations in support of Ukraine. Cyber Command, the U.S. military's hacking unit, has conducted offensive cyber operations in support of Ukraine as it defends itself against Russia's invasion. The head of the command has confirmed. And don't you just love the way that they put this? They say, we have conducted offensive cyber operations in support of Ukraine as it defends itself. So it's kind of, they're like trying to say, yes, they're offensive, but it's for defensive purposes. The best defense is a good offense. So yeah, we're taking offensive measures against Russia. The disclosure underscores how important projecting power in cyberspace in support of Ukraine's defenses and to potentially deter Russia from conducting cyber attacks against the U.S. infrastructure has been to the Biden administration as it continues to avoid directly engaging Russia in a shooting war. Oh, okay. So we can do all sorts of other war, just not a shooting war. Quote, we have conducted a series of operations across the full spectrum, offensive, defensive, and information operations, General Paul Nakasone said in an interview with Sky News. A spokesperson for the command did not dispute the accuracy of the article, but declined to elaborate on what the command's operations in Ukraine have entailed. So we don't know exactly what it is, but we know that it is offensive towards Russia. So, again, now, it goes on. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there was some some nuances with cyber war because it is so new. There's not as many norms and established boundaries, so they feel like they have a little bit of leeway to maneuver offensively without provoking Russia. However, it's knowing the pattern that we have watched the U.S. and the West carry out of the past, the entire war, basically, even before so. This was done to, in their words, to deter Russia from hacking U.S. infrastructure, which, if you translate it into the language that we just decoded throughout this show so far, means that they are trying to provoke Russia to launch a cyber attack on U.S. infrastructure, and that's just a fun thing going on. Nice icing on the cake there. And last but not least, there was in our continued obsession with the continent of Antarctica, Express.co.uk had a headline: Putin could spark territorial free-for-all in Antarctica by threatening to rip up treaty. Oh no. Guys, remember in 2021 when we suddenly had some sort of supernatural obsession with Antarctica, and we were, our analysis really was pointing to the fact that Antarctica will be the most important continent to the future of the New World Order? Well, we've tracked how over and over and over it has connected directly with mainstream geopolitical events. And in this case, it's directly under threat from Putin, apparently. I don't know. I could read it, but the long story short is there's one important quote here. Let me go down and get it. Oh no, of course my highlights have disappeared. Here it is. What the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting in Berlin at the moment has had to contend with is how do you ensure the continuation of consensus when you find one party's behavior on the face of it deeply problematic, if not objectionable. He's talking about the Antarctica meeting. There's something like 23 countries that have all agreed to keep Antarctica neutral and only for science. But it's all done through consensus. So it could take one country, Russia, Putin, to break that consensus, which would, if not legally nullify the treaty, put it in severe peril. There's another quote here. This is really the conundrum that the Antarctic Treaty partners find themselves in. Because if the system depends on consensus, the last thing you want is a major party, and Russia is a major party, walking away from that system. He added that should Russia choose to abandon the treaty, it could conceivably set up a rival system with China and perhaps India as partners, or even trigger a, quote, territorial and resource free-for-all. I think this is a very interesting setup. You know, when you're like setting up a board game, like if you're playing Risk, you spend like a half hour just setting up the board. Yeah. And figuring out, everybody's kind of seeing where everybody's positioning. What we're watching, I believe, is, if there is no further kinetic war between the U.S. and Russia in Eastern Europe, we could very well see a situation where there are military operations defending and or invading Antarctica for resources, for land, for strategic positioning. I think that this is a signal that Antarctica is not a safe place anymore.
Well, that'll be very interesting as sort of a neutral field, right? Neutral place where it's the petri dish, it's the pure continent that hasn't been affected by.
You're not on any legal territory of another nation, so there could be, you can break rules that might be in place for invading nations and stuff. Again, going back to RoboJocks, man, is hey, Just send down the giant robots and 1-on-1, 1v1 for control of Antarctica.
Yeah. Well, it seems like the Russia story, the Ukraine story, has a lot more to do with a lot of everything. It's not just the territorial geographical thing going on. As you mentioned, there's the spiritual side, there's the spiritual
Financial
/ religious,
side.
there's the financial side.
All New World Order 2.0 categories, by the way.
I mean, it just seems like it was all planned. Like they planned some kind of reset of the world, everything or something.
Can you imagine? Yeah, it's like there's some sort of, I'm not going to say like secret cabal, but maybe very public
Super
collection,
public cabal, yeah.
a very public live streaming group of world leaders who get together once a year and plan the future of humanity. I don't know. It's kind of like
we'll
that.
get to some more of that.